Welcome to the Not Old Better Show Prevention Magazine Healthy Living interview series on radio and podcast. The show covering all things health, wellness, culture, and more. The show for all of us who aren't old, we're better. Each week, we'll interview superstars, experts, and ordinary people doing extraordinary things, all related to this wonderful experience of getting better, not just older. Now, here's your host, the award-winning Paul Vogelzang.
Welcome to the Not Old Better Show Prevention Magazine Health and Wellness interview series on radio and podcast. I'm Paul Vogelzang, and this is the next installment of our Editor-in-Chief series with Sarah Smith. And today we have another engaging episode in collaboration with Prevention Magazine. We're tackling some of the most pressing health topics crucial for our audience, adults over 60 who are committed to living their best lives. Let's get right into it. We have another packed show for our issue overview today. Sarah Smith, the editor-in-chief of Prevention Magazine, is with us first. Sarah will briefly talk about the May Prevention Magazine highlights, like subjects of wellness and gardening, comprehensive eye health, AI, and healthcare. That's right, artificial intelligence and healthcare. That's going to be a good one. You're going to want to pay attention to that. And then our feature interview with Prevention Magazine cover story writer Marisa Cohen about brain health. May's issue of Prevention Magazine offers so many great articles and resources, but I picked these three, particularly because of the importance of health, brain health, artificial intelligence and health, and eye health. All offer a unique health insights. We will talk about AI and healthcare in an upcoming extended episode about artificial intelligence and healthcare with popular returning guest Meryl Davids-Landau. So please stay tuned for that. But today's episode promises to be both informative and inspiring, tailored to our seasoned listeners who are passionate about living their best lives. Let's welcome Editor-in-Chief at Prevention Magazine, Sarah Smith. Sarah Smith, Editor-in-Chief at Prevention Magazine. Welcome back to the show. We're going to talk about May 2024, already upon us, May 2024 issue of Prevention Magazine. Welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here with you.
So nice to talk to you. May, really just around the corner. So many great things to talk about in this issue. I personally am a big fan of gardening, and so that subject in the issue just jumped right out at me. My wife is a big gardener. We don't have a whole lot of space around our home to do that, but the article in the May issue talks about a lot of those things. Maybe give us a quick brief about what we're going to look forward to reading more of about gardening as a wellness practice.
Yeah, it really is. There's so many health benefits to gardening. There was a big study done at Penn State that showed that gardeners who 65 and older, people who garden, compared to people who don't garden, had a lower risk of heart disease, and they had lower odds of developing diabetes too. So it's a nice gardening. It's a nice idea, and it's a really actually physically beneficial thing also. And it has mental health benefits too, which, a lot of people feel is true. You're out there, you're digging in the dirt. You're like, I feel so good being out here. But researchers, of course, have looked into that too, that it's not, that feeling that you're feeling is, there's science behind it. Researchers from Tokyo found that it all eases stress and anxiety and lowers your risk of depression. So it's really legit, as well as good for your, just feels good to be doing it. Good for your backyard if you have enough space, and if you don't, you can still get all of those benefits. You really don't need your own space. You get the benefits of gardening from a flower pot, but you can, or you can have a window garden or a community garden or volunteer activities where you're just cleaning up in a park, for the day. All of those things, because you're outside, you're moving, you're taking care of something, you're participating with other people in some cases, and all of those things are really, really good for you.
I'll just say, too, proudly, my wife grows basil, and we have the best pesto. And so selfishly, I love the gardening aspect of our life.
That's another good point. You get the food too, the very
food.
healthy food that you know exactly where it came from. That's a really powerful thing.
Yeah. Well, good. Another article that jumped right out at me in the May issue is the idea of comprehensive eye health and how critical it is to our aging process. The article covers literally everything from diet to the importance of regular checkups. Maybe highlight a few of those key takeaways for our audience.
I'd love to talk about diet as it comes to eyes because, a lot of people have heard eat carrots for your eyes. And that is true. That is not a myth. Carrots are good for your eyes. But I will tell you a few other foods that are really good for your eyes. Kale, citrus. Citrus has vitamin C. Kale has phytonutrients that that can protect your eyes from the sun and UV rays, that kind of thing. But citrus has vitamin C that can prevent cataracts or delay them, since a lot of people get them. Peanuts are good for your eyes. Did you know that?
I didn't. I saw that. That was a new one for me.
Yeah, and that's because they have vitamin E, and that prevents breakdown in eye tissue, which can then, lead to other serious eye issues. The other one we have is oysters, which I know we don't all eat every day, but they do have zinc in them. So zinc is sort of the key there. If you, find other sources of zinc, that's a good nutrient for your eye.
Stay up to date with regular checkups. Those are the obvious ones. But
well, you know what I think is so interesting about that is that I think a lot of people do think if you have good eyesight, you think, I don't really need the eye doctor. If you already wear glasses, you think, well, if your prescription's okay, you think, I don't really need the eye doctor. But everybody needs the eye doctor. It's really important to get those regular checkups because they can look, inside the eye and see what's happening and what's coming. It's one of the really cool things we have in this issue is all of these images of what your eyesight looks like if you have things like cataracts or macular degeneration, and seeing that with your own eyes, if you will, is really, oh my gosh, eye-opening. How many eye puns can we have? But
I don't know.
When you see that, I think it's a really important reminder of why you want to have your eyes checked so you can slow down, avoid those age-related eye issues.
Yeah.
And then, another thing is I think a lot of people suffer from dry eyes. We also cover not the less scary eye problems, the less, surgery, lifelong ones, like allergies and digital eye strain. Those are all important things to keep an eye on. Sorry, I can't help it. But dry eye is an interesting one because I think a lot of people suffer from it, especially as the eyes get older. And you can try a warm washcloth or a heated eye mask because that can help promote your own tears that you need that you're not getting when you have dry eye. But I also want to mention that eye drops can be really helpful. But in the last several months, there were a number of eye drop recalls, and I just want to put a public service announcement out there to try to look out for eye drop recalls, because there was a big one last fall and not every drugstore took everything off the shelf. I was actually at a drugstore buying eye drops for my son. And because I'm the editor of Prevention, I knew there'd been an eye drop recall and they had some still on the shelf. And I told them, you have to take these off your shelf. I was that person,
good
telling
for
them
you.
that.
Yes,
but I just want to point out to people that eye drop recalls are something you should be sure you know about for yourself. You can't necessarily be sure that every store has gotten the memo.
Very helpful. I have to just tell you, just a wonderful piece that I found in the May issue, May 2024 issue, is about AI, artificial intelligence in healthcare. I think there's so much anticipation. There's also so many good and bad out about this subject, but you really do a wonderful job. The title of the article, too, really caught me. Hello, Dr. Roboto, about AI in healthcare. Give us that sense, because that's a big story.
This is such an interesting topic. And what I love about this is the reporter that we had write it, who's someone I think you've talked to, Meryl Davids Landau. She she is no Pollyanna when it comes to healthcare issues. She looks at things very seriously and will tell us if there's a problem coming, right? And so when Meryl came back and said, you know what, everybody, there's some good news here. There's some really, and I was amazed and happy to hear it, because I feel like we can trust Meryl with this 100%. So what's so interesting is that there's some things that AI can do or will soon be able to do that can really help doctors in a way that could transform or really help people's health. Like, they can read test images better than people do. They can detect patterns in ways that overworked and busy doctors can't necessarily, and who are human, just the human brain. So if you ever have the opportunity with a mammogram or a colonoscopy to check off a box that says, do you want AI to review, your records as well? The doctors that talk to Meryl would definitely recommend that you check that off, because they can support a doctor who is reading this, and they are better at catching things than doctors. So I found that amazing. Yeah. They're also better at tracking people over time who are in a hospital. I mean, this doesn't apply to everybody, but it's so interesting because, doctors and nurses who have so many people to keep track of aren't necessarily seeing every single data change in a person, but AI sees it, and then they can alert someone, this person's condition is worsening in a way that if it continues, it could be dangerous. And they can see that before a person can. And so then they can intervene earlier. So it's really just amazing. And they might be able to, AI at some point might be able to organize your information and data for a doctor in a way that then allows the doctor to spend more time looking at you in the appointment rather than taking notes. You know how so often they need to track and all of their interactions, and that's really important. But when they're doing that in the meeting with you, that can feel like they're not listening. And so AI might be able to do that for them so that they can really, pay attention to you. So it's very exciting to think of these things as how they really might help medical care. But of course, we still have to, be aware, of the potential bias in AI and what information is being fed into it, and making sure doctors don't over-rely on it. But I would say at this point in time, we're at a really important point where people are very aware that it has its limitations. And if we continue to, think of it as a tool rather than a replacement, I think we're going to, be in a really good place.
I found this article to be, really just as wonderful. I thought this aspect of personalization it is so important because our healthcare is so personal to us. The other thing that just jumped out at me was this idea of cost efficiencies, that through AI, we might become a little bit, because cost in healthcare is one of the biggest subjects that we hear all about, and this could save us some money.
That is true, and that is a very exciting development, because it's true. It's a huge problem, the cost of care, at every level, and the red tape around it. So if this can cut through some of that, it could really, improve so many people's lives.
Well, the other article, and we're going to jump into this conversation in just a moment in introducing Marisa Cohen, we're going to talk about brain health, which is the cover story for the May 2024 issue of Prevention Magazine. You want to tell us a little bit about the spring cleaning your brain?
Yeah, I love this concept, spring cleaning your brain.
Yeah.
Marisa has written a lot about brain health for prevention. And the tack she took this time, which I find delightful, is this idea that just as we sort of look as the sunlight comes in and we see those dust bunnies, we do that spring clean of the home, that we can do the same with our brains. There's just these, there's a really good, there's best practices for cleaning your bathroom, and there are those for your brain too. Very actionable things, everyday things you can do when it comes to exercise and eating and all the things that I'm sure she'll tell you about. This is very doable to get that brain sort of freshened up and stronger, so that it it's going to serve you well and keep you happy the way a nice, clean, organized home does.
So, audience, stay tuned for Marisa Cohen. Sarah, I just have one final thing. I want to say just a quick thank you and a quick farewell. This is our final episode together. You are moving forward with your career. My best to you. It has just been wonderful to work with you. And you have this fantastic sense of humor, this wonderful enthusiasm. You've just made this work. And it's certainly worked for me. And I got to tell you, I'm going to miss you.
Thank you, Paul. It is a pleasure talking to you and connecting with your audience. And I really appreciate that. I've been at Prevention as the editor, leading this brand for 6 years. And it's time for me to try something else. I'm just actually going to try a whole new field. I'm going to go into the healthcare industry and do communications. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I look forward to, sharing what I learned there with you in some way or other.
Well, we look forward to that. I definitely do. And my best to you. Good luck. And the same to your family through all of this. And I know you will do just so well.
Thank you so much. I look forward to listening to the show in the future.
Hi, everybody. We're just going to take a quick break before we introduce the next guest. But at the Not Old Better Show, we understand the journey of aging gracefully. That's why we've partnered with Prevention Magazine, your trusted companion in health and wellness for over 70 years. Just like the Not Old Better Show, Prevention Magazine's commitment to your well-being and happiness has never wavered. Join us each month on the Not Old Better Show for exclusive insights from Prevention Magazine. We dive deep into topics that matter to you, from health to happiness. Personally, I've been a long-time Prevention Magazine subscriber, including the All Access plan. You can subscribe to Prevention Magazine to unlock a treasure trove of health and wellness knowledge. And join us here on the Not Old Better Show for in-depth, behind-the-scenes information and more. And that's just the beginning. This year, May, June, the rest of 2024 are filled with invaluable insights. This April, for example, we're covering essential topics like sleep tips, the best walking shoes, and ways to battle nausea. Check back with us monthly for our deep dive with these exclusive interviews. I personally recommend Prevention Magazine for staying informed and empowered. So join our vibrant community at prevention.com. The Not Old Better Show and Prevention Magazine, celebrating life together. Visit Prevention Magazine's website at prevention.com. Marisa Cohen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's so nice to talk with you. The brain is, I'll just put it, it's a terrible pun, but the brain's just on our mind. And I know that we have got to be on top of this. You've written this wonderful article for the health section of the upcoming May edition of Prevention Magazine. And you do so much great work on this subject. I know you've yes, congratulations on the article. Absolutely. Let's just jump right in. It's one I think our audience is really going to respond to positively. And it caught me immediately, too. And I know it will our audience. It's titled Spring Clean Your Brain. That's such a great title. And I want to talk to you a little bit in depth about this. And I think we should jump right in, because one of the things that we hear this quite a bit, that learning something new is important. But the science really shows that. It really bears that out. And so I wonder if you talk to us a little bit about why that's important.
Right. And I was just going to say it all comes down to neuroplasticity, which is the idea that our brain continues to make new connections and learn things and adapt over the years. And the more we do that, the more, if something does happen, if there's a brain injury, if you're starting to lose, connections in one part of the brain's able to adapt. And I like to think of it, I think someone once made this analogy to me, think of it like if you're old enough to remember old LPs that had all the grooves in them, you think about all the grooves in your brain, and the more grooves there are, if some of them get scratched or smudged, there's other ways to go around. So I like to think of it like that the more connections you have in your brain, the more places there are for those connections to go, sort of to make detours and to continue growing and learning and adapting throughout your life, even if other things happen. I mean, our brain naturally starts shrinking and losing neurons from sort of like in our 20s or 30s. That's totally normal. That's why, I'm sure you are like me, occasionally forget someone's name, or you walk into a room and you're like, what was I looking for? That's totally normal. The things like that are normal. That's happening. Your brain slows down a little bit as you age. But by continuing to exercise it, by learning new things and challenging it, you continue to make those connections and can stay healthier longer.
And what you say in the article, which I thought was just also so impactful, and I really resonated with this, and I know our audience will again, is just this idea that in this process of exercising our brain and keeping this current, learning something new, we're actually building a little bit of a reserve, kind of in the same way that we build muscle, and that can help diminish some of the issues that surround dementia.
Exactly.
Well,
and, there's some things like we want to be clear that if Alzheimer's, we can push it back. There's things you can do to keep your brain healthier longer. There's right now, obviously, we do not have a cure or a way to completely prevent Alzheimer's, but there are definitely things you can do that can sort of push it a little further down, keep it healthier and stronger longer. And I also want to point out, it's not just Alzheimer's, it's also vascular dementia, which is very much related to heart health. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. So there's things you can do every day that can keep your brain healthy. And there was one study that I mentioned in the article that I think was in the Lancet. They estimate about 40% of cases of various kinds of dementia can be prevented or delayed by making these very, not necessarily easy, but doable everyday changes, which are things like drinking less, smoking less, or not smoking at all, exercising, eating a heart-healthy diet. So for me, and we had discussed this, that my mom is going to be 85 in May, and she has been living with Alzheimer's for the last about 13 years. And I saw her go from being one of the smartest people I knew, knowing every answer on Jeopardy. Mm-hmm. She, graduated from college early, had a master's degree by the time she was 20 or 21, I think. And she's been living with Alzheimer's. So for me, knowing that there are things I can do every day to at least push this disease back, if I'm destined to get it, but at least push it further and further back, I think that's very empowering.
Yeah, and you refer to this idea of kind of healthier diet, and as
mm-hmm.
in kind of keeping with the title of your article, Deep Cleaning the Brain. I'd like you to talk a little bit about healthier meals and some foods, sure, and kind of thinking preventatively with regard to food.
Yeah, and so food, it affects our brain in a few different ways. One is through inflammation, and we know there are certain foods that are, cause inflammation. There's certain foods that are better for your body in terms of inflammation. There's also foods that can, that are not great for your arteries, and those that can lead to vascular dementia. And of course, the standard American diet, as we know it, is filled with all the sort of not very great for your brain foods, which include processed foods, fatty foods, refined carbs, sugary beverages. All of these things are not doing your body or your brain any good. So, and there's lots of research on this and the connection between both the gut biome, all of that, and what you eat and how your brain, how it affects your brain. So, I sort of joke in the article that over the pandemic, how many of us bought boxes and boxes of shelf-stable food, snacks and cookies. It's 4 years later. If you still got those hanging around, get rid of them. There are a lot of really delicious foods, delicious snacks that are much better for your brain. They're, part of the anti-inflammation diet. We talk about, if you read health magazines, if you read prevention, you've heard about the Mediterranean diet over and over. This is very plant-forward. The more plants, the more flavonoids, the more leafy greens, tomatoes, things like that you can eat, the better for your brain. The healthy fats, we have olive oil, we have salmon. There's one of the experts I interviewed, who all she does is study the connection between mood, brain, and diet. She recommended some really delicious snacks that are great for your brain, which is hummus, nut butters, extra dark chocolate. I mean, these are all things I love to eat, and eat them knowing I'm doing my brain a favor.
And I think you're referring to Dr. Uma Naidu, who's been on the program too in relation to our prevention series.
Exactly.
Wonderful to talk with. And she really does point out that there are specific foods tied to this idea of inflammation that you refer to. And so the less of that, the better we're going to be in terms of kind of keeping our brain in good shape. Marisa Cohen is our guest today. She's written this wonderful piece in the May edition of Prevention Magazine, Spring Clean Your Brain. And we're talking about the brain today, of course. Marisa, I just really have a couple of other things that, I want to get to, because you make reference to your mom, and thank you. And of course, our thoughts go out to her and to you. This is a difficult area, but one of the interesting things that you've mentioned to me recently in respect to dementia is this connection between hearing aids and dementia. And I wonder if you talk about that. Was this something that you realized as a result of your mom, or did you learn this elsewhere?
No, this is actually for another article. I do write a lot of articles about brain health for prevention. And this was something that was really surprising to me, that there was a study that came out of Singapore that found that getting a hearing aid was, if you need one, was associated with a 19% decline in the risk of long-term cognitive decline. And the reason for that is when you're struggling to hear, your brain is using so many of its resources just to make sense of the sounds and the language coming in, that you're not, you're using up all the juice you need for other things. Also, and any of these things, and I wanted to mention this too, like the hormone cortisol, the stress hormone, is also, very damaging to your brain, and being stressed by not being able to hear things. I mean, once you can hear clearly, you can communicate, it really can give your brain a break and, let it focus on other things. One other thing I wanted to mention in terms of hearing loss, related to hearing loss, being able to communicate with people, making connections with people. One of the most important things that we've found that is really, important for brain health is making true social connections. And that doesn't mean going on Facebook and checking out Instagram. That means talking to people on the phone, getting together in person, going out for walks, staying connected. That's like good for everything, basically. And, if you're able to communicate more clearly because you can hear people, obviously that's only going to help.
Two things that I want to touch on with you just briefly, because they're almost tied together. One has to do with this term this phrase that you use in the article called an input-free morning, and I wonder if you just touch on that briefly. And then the other thing that I thought was really helpful, and it kind of ties this together, is to free up a little space in your brain by releasing some baggage. And so talk about both of those.
So, the releasing baggage, and again, I was talking about cortisol and stress and anxiety, and we do know that there is a connection between anxiety and depression and risk of dementia. So, when you hold a grudge against somebody, and that's something I've been really working on in my life, to just let things go. And one of the reasons is because that can turn into what, they call like chronic anger, where you're just sitting with it, you're ruminating with it, it's causing stress in your brain. By letting that go, finding a way to either talk to the person and air it out, and that's not always possible. And one of the I spoke to a psychologist, a therapist, who gave a really kind of fun way to do that. And it may sound silly, but sometimes doing a physical action can sort of kick your body and your mind into really taking on what you're trying to do, is to just go get one of those little dandelions and sort of tell it what you're angry about, and just blow as hard as you can, and you get the breath out, you get that, you literally see it blowing away. And sometimes something like that can do the trick. So it's worth trying, right?
Yes.
And what was the other thing you asked me about?
Well, I think the other thing that just jumped out at me was this idea of having kind of an input-free time, each day.
Right.
Morning, perhaps, is what you recommend, but it doesn't necessarily.
So, how many of us get out of bed, roll over, and start scrolling through our texts and emails and Instagram, or reading the news, which no matter what side you're on these days, but the world is a pretty stressful place. So, starting your day with that burst of stress hormone is like already putting you in that defensive, like your brain is already kind of working through a lot of, stress. So just starting your morning, not going directly to your phone, not turning on the TV news, but having, an hour over breakfast to just calmly start the day and ease into the day can be helpful for just, setting your day off in a non-stress-free way that your brain can kind of recover and detox from any stress you had the night before.
So helpful. Marisa Cohen's been our guest today. She's written a wonderful new article in the May edition of Prevention titled Spring Clean Your Brain. I just have so enjoyed our conversation, Marisa, and I know you'll be writing about this in the future. We'd love to have you come back. I think the other thing that'd be great because you always have these great tips. One of the things too that I want to make sure just call everybody's attention to, and Marisa does this in the article, and that's Marisa, you refer to at the back of Prevention's magazine are all these great brain games. Check those out because that fits into this too.
One thing I love, I am a huge puzzle fiend, but the trick is I think some people think, I do a Sudoku every day, that I'm training my brain. That's great. The trick is you got to keep trying harder ones and harder ones every day, trying different types of puzzles, because that's when you get those new grooves in your LP. That's when you get those neuroplasticity, is when you try something new, whether it's a new type of puzzle or really challenging puzzle that you haven't done before. Going to a new city and trying to find your way around without using your GPS on your phone, or learning a new language. These things that really challenge you are what makes your brain healthy.
Oh, well, I can only imagine that'll be a lot of fun. It was so much fun talking to you, Marisa Cohen. Thank you. Thanks for this great article. Yep, we will talk again soon. Bye-bye. I hope you've enjoyed our May 2024 Prevention Magazine Editor-in-Chief series with Sarah Smith. Today, we spoke with Sarah and Marisa Cohen about brain health. We talked to Sarah Smith, Editor-in-Chief, about the subjects of wellness and gardening, comprehensive eye health, AI, and healthcare. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Marisa Cohen, for your invaluable insights into the May issue of Prevention Magazine. Please check out the print edition of Prevention Magazine coming up. But thank you to our audience for tuning in. Remember, knowledge is power, and it's never too late to live your best life. The Not Old Better Show Prevention Magazine Health and Wellness Interview Series. Check out the May 2024 issue, and please sign up for the Prevention Magazine Prevention Premium Program. Everything will be in our show notes today. Please be well, be safe, and let's talk about better. The Not Old Better Show Prevention Magazine Health and Wellness Interview Series on radio and podcast. Until next time, stay informed and stay healthy. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next month.